In the frigid seas off Alaska, whales break the surface to breathe life-sustaining air. In Imhand in Illinois, a microscopic amoeba constantly changes its shape as it moves through the water. An emerald tree boa in the Amazon rainforest slides noiselessly along a branch looking for prey, while a flower decorates a garden in New York. Life on Earth has many sizes, shapes, and shades. But no matter what they look like, all living things share a characteristic that makes them more alike than different. All living things are made of cells, the basic units of life.
In some ways, cells are like the bricks that are used to build a house or building. How these bricks are put together and how many bricks are used determines the size and shape of the structure. There may be tens of thousands of bricks in a multi-storied apartment building. But bricks that are the same size are the basic materials for much smaller structures, like a two-story house. In a similar way, the size of a living thing depends not on how big its cells are, but on how many cells it has. A whale has trillions of cells. But on average, these cells are no larger than the cells in a bumblebee. Most cells are very small. If the average size cell in your body were a quarter of an inch across, you'd be taller than most skyscrapers.
While humans and many other living things are composed of billions of cells, there are also tiny living things that consist of only a single cell. An amoeba has no definite shape. It moves by extending finger-like extensions called pseudopods out from the rest of its cellular body, which then follows. Other single-cell creatures, Euglena, propel themselves through the water with their whip-like flagella, while Paramecia have bodies lined with hair-like cilia that beat together. Light microscopes let us see such creatures and other kinds of cells by using lenses to focus rays of light in such a way that a magnified image is created. Light microscopes let you see cells and even some of their different parts, but they can't let you examine these parts in detail. An electron microscope is much more powerful. Using magnets to focus beams of electrons, electron microscopes can magnify things hundreds of thousands of times. Using electron microscopes, scientists can examine the details of even small cell parts.
Understanding what goes on inside cells is necessary for understanding how any living thing functions. Cells perform an amazing array of tasks that are necessary for living things to exist. In fact, while cells are like building blocks, they are also like factories. Like factories, cells do a great deal of work. Just as an automobile assembly line puts together cars from different parts, cells use raw materials to manufacture things a body needs, like new cells and various chemicals. Like factories, cells require a lot of energy to function. And just as different sections of a factory perform different jobs, cells have a variety of parts that do separate jobs.
There are many kinds of animal and plant cells that have different architectures and do different things. But many of the parts of these cells are the same and have the same functions. If we created a typical animal cell, it might look something like this. Even though no specific animal cell looks exactly like this one, it contains features shared by most such cells. Surrounding the outside of the cell is the cell membrane. This membrane is very thin, only about 1/100,000th of a millimeter thick. A photograph of a cell membrane taken with the help of an electron microscope reveals that it has 3 layers, 2 dark outer layers sandwiching a clear middle layer. The cell membrane acts as a boundary between a cell and the environment outside, but it also allows certain substances to pass in and out. Particles of food, for example, can enter through the membrane so that they can be used as raw materials for manufacturing and as fuel for energy. Oxygen can also enter a cell to be used for burning fuel. Other things pass out of the cell through the membrane, including waste like carbon dioxide gas and important chemical products that the cell has manufactured.
Inside the cell membrane, there are many different structures called organelles, which literally means little organs. One organelle, the nucleus, is the control center of the cell. The nucleus has a membrane that has pores in it. These allow certain molecules to enter or leave the nucleus. Inside the nucleus, there is fiber-like material called chromosomes. Chromosomes contain the cell's genetic information. This genetic information is like an architect's blueprint that determines how wood, glass, and other materials are used to build a house. The genetic blueprint in a person's chromosomes determines how different proteins are put together. These proteins are responsible for physical features such as the color of a person's hair and eyes, the shape of her nose, and even whether she is susceptible to certain kinds of diseases.
From the information contained in the chromosome blueprints, the nucleus sends messages to the cell's cytoplasm, which makes up everything else that is inside the cell. The cytoplasm is composed of water, minerals, vitamins, salts, a variety of chemicals, as well as different organelles. Some of the organelles are called endoplasmic reticulum. Among other things, endoplasmic reticulum serve as the cell's assembly lines because they are where protein products are put together based on instructions from the nucleus. The endoplasmic reticulum serve other functions as well. They're like highways that provide a transportation network. Among other things, they connect different organelles in a cell and allow them to exchange materials.
Mitochondria are another kind of organelle in the cytoplasm. Inside a mitochondrion, there are highly folded membranes. Here, chemical reactions take place that use oxygen to burn particles of food for energy. Mitochondria are often called the powerhouses of the cell because they are responsible for providing for the cell's energy needs. The number of mitochondria varies in different kinds of cells. Very active cells, like muscle cells, contain thousands of mitochondria.
Before particles of food can be burned in mitochondria, they are first processed by other organelles called lysosomes. These contain chemicals called enzymes that digest small food particles that have passed into the cell. Lysosomes are also the garbage disposal units of the cell. They break down worn-out cell parts and gather waste products from the cell's cytoplasm. Another kind of organelle, the Golgi bodies, are the cell's packaging centers. Here, proteins are mixed with other chemicals and enclosed in bubble-like containers that then break away and move to the cell membrane, where their contents are released from the cell.
Plant cells share many of the same features as animal cells. They too have a nucleus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi bodies, and lysosomes. But plant cells are different from animal cells in other respects. Plant cells, like animal cells, have a cell membrane, but they also have a thick cell wall surrounding this membrane. Many plant cells also have large sacs called vacuoles. A vacuole contains fluid consisting of water, sugars, and other things. A vacuole full of fluid is like a balloon full of water and keeps a plant cell rigid. When the vacuoles of a plant cells lose their fluid and dry out, the cells can no longer provide rigid support. As a result, the plant wilts.
Many plant cells, particularly in leaves and stems, have tiny green bodies in them called chloroplasts. Chloroplasts make it possible for plants to manufacture their own food through photosynthesis. Photosynthesis requires energy from sunlight. It also requires carbon dioxide gas from the atmosphere and water that for most plants comes from the soil. Inside chloroplasts, the energy of sunlight is used to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose, a kind of sugar that is a plant's main food. In the process, oxygen gas also is produced. The oxygen that we breathe comes from photosynthesis.
Living things that are composed of many cells usually have different types of cells. These have different designs that help them perform specific jobs. Not all plant cells, for example, have chloroplasts. Cells and roots are not involved in photosynthesis and don't have chloroplasts. But some root cells have an unusual feature that serves a plant in other ways. These cells have root hairs, delicate projections that can absorb water and minerals from the soil. Other cells serve as a plant's plumbing system. This cross-section of a root shows different kinds of hollow cells. Phloem cells conduct glucose from the plant's leaves. Xylem cells conduct water from roots to other parts of the plant. A photograph taken with the help of an electron microscope shows how xylem cells have a tube-like shape that makes it easy for them to conduct water.
In plants and animals, similar cells are grouped together to form tissues. The human body is made up of many different kinds of tissue. Groups of bone cells, for example, form bone tissue, and muscle cells form muscle tissue. The different types of cells that make up the tissues of the human body have distinctive architectures that are well suited for what they do. Take the cells that form the epidermis, the thin outer part of skin. The epidermis consists of several layers of cells that fit closely together. They provide an effective barrier against bacteria and other things that could cause harm if they got inside the body. The top layer consists of dead cells that are constantly being rubbed off and replaced by cells from below.
The muscles attached to the skeleton have cells that look very unlike skin cells. Muscle cells are very long and fiber-like. Each cell contains many fine threads called myofibrils. Myofibrils, in turn, contain two types of even smaller filaments called actin and myosin. A closer look at the actin and myosin shows how they can slide over each other, making it possible for a muscle cell to contract and expand. Thousands of muscle cells contract and expand together, making it possible to move an arm or leg. Bone cells serve a different function. Bone cells secrete calcium and other materials that harden and form the body's bones.
When we think or try to solve a problem, we're using other kinds of cells. Nerve cells, which are also called neurons. There are billions of neurons in the brain alone, and these can communicate with other nerve cells that branch throughout the body, forming the body's nervous system. The architecture of nerve cells varies according to what function they serve, but all have the same basic design. Each consists of a single cell body which contains the cell's nucleus. Branching out from the cell body are fibers of different lengths called dendrites. There is also a single long fiber called the axon. In some cells, the axon is very long, up to 3 feet. Signals race from the dendrite of one cell through the cell body and along the axon. At the end of the axon, the signal is picked up by the dendrite of another nerve cell. Together, the billions of nerve cells in the body form an intricate communications network that makes possible our thoughts and senses. Ow!
A drop of blood tells another story about cells. The blood that flows through the veins and arteries of the body's circulatory system contains different kinds of cells that perform jobs vital to our existence. Red blood cells are the most numerous. They look a little like donuts with their centers filled in. Red blood cells carry oxygen from the lungs to other cells throughout the body. There are about 25 trillion red blood cells in the body of an adult. Each has a lifespan of only about 125 days, so new ones are constantly being produced at the rate of about 2 million a second. Blood also contains white blood cells. Although much fewer in number, white blood cells are important defenders of the body against invaders like disease-causing bacteria. Some white blood cells can actually engulf bacteria and other harmful things, making them harmless by eating them.
In this program, we've seen how all living things are made up of cells. Some, like the euglena, consist of only a single cell. Others are made up of trillions of cells.
We looked at a typical animal cell and some of the functions of its different parts. The nucleus is the cell's control center. The chromosomes inside the nucleus contain the genetic blueprint that determines how proteins are manufactured. Mitochondria are the cell's power plants. And lysosomes digest particles of food and are the cell's garbage disposal units.
We compared animal cells to plant cells, which have a thick cell wall and large vacuoles. Many plant cells also have chloroplasts, where photosynthesis takes place. During photosynthesis, plants use the energy of sunlight and carbon dioxide to manufacture their own food and produce oxygen.
We saw that many plants and animals, including humans, have an amazing variety of cells. In our own bodies, nerve cells make it possible for us to think. Muscle cells can relax and contract, enabling us to move. Red blood cells carry life-sustaining oxygen through our circulatory system. And white blood cells help protect us from disease.
All living things are the sum of their cells. Cells are the building blocks and factories of life.